What's going on, guys? Eric Swanick here from Swan Hockey for another edition of Swan Hockey Live. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Ryan Swain from Swain's Hockey Skills and Development. Yes, we're two different people, two different companies. Sometimes we get confused, but here you see us both at the same time. We are different. Ryan, what's going on, man?
What's up, Eric? Thanks for having me. How's it going?
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So before we jump into this, guys, remember, if you're new here, welcome. This is completely interactive. We want to hear from you guys. Throw up your comments, questions, concerns, opinions. This is, again, completely interactive. Your comments will help drive the show, especially this one, because we're talking about, when should you be making the jump from youth hockey to junior hockey? So we want to know who's in here. We want to know who's participating tonight, so we can, again, where maybe what league you play in, where you're looking to go. It'll help drive the show, so we can touch, and make sure that we cover, try to cover, as many more specific situations as we can. So definitely utilize the comments. You can comment, in all, what was I going to say, on YouTube, or don't forget, you can join the Swan Hockey Discord. You can go to the live podcast channel in the Swan Hockey Discord. You can put your comments in there, or you can comment them right on Facebook, right on YouTube. Throw your comments in. Let us know where you're coming from. Let us know what leagues you're coming from, where you're looking to go, that kind of stuff. It'll help drive the show. In the meantime, Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing, about Swain's Hockey Skills and Development, and your place and what you're doing.
Yeah, awesome. So again, thanks for having me on. I'm more than happy to do this. It should be fun. So I started Swain's Hockey Skills and Development about 7 years ago now. Really started just training kids kind of while I was playing in college, and just really fell in love with it. I thought it was really cool to get on the ice, especially in a small group setting, and you could really help guys benefit right away. It's almost instantly transferable in a lot of cases. So I felt like it was way better than a team practice, especially with younger kids, where you might get a group of 20 of them or whatever the amount is, and kind of goes in one ear and out the other. But with smaller groups, I've felt that everyone kind of wanted to be there. You're paying to be there. It's extra stuff. And I felt like for the most part, everyone kind of took a lot out of it every session. So I kind of fell in love with it and just kept going. I didn't know what was going to come of it. But one thing led to another. And now train guys that are playing pro, train 6-year-olds still. Like, it doesn't matter. We kind of, myself and 4 or 5 other guys, we skate almost every day at a couple different rinks, and we just have fun with it.
Yeah, for sure. And the fun's a major part, and just for everybody out there, like when you say pro, you're talking about like guys up to the NHL, right?
Yeah, there's guys that we skate with regularly in the summertime that have NHL games played for sure.
Yeah, so you're literally going 6 years old all the way up to the NHL, which is really, really cool. That's awesome. And yeah, Ryan and I first met each other. It was probably, gosh, I mean, I was probably like, I don't know, 17 years old, 18 years old. I'm 33 now. Going back a while. We actually met at training sessions. So I was a goalie, and Ryan was one of the, was one of the shooters at, some of the, clinics and stuff that I attended. And that's how we met. And, we just became friends, and, and I've helped Ryan with his playing career. He's played in my summer program, and again, we're friends outside of hockey, and, like we're close in age, and, and all these years later, still going. I mean, I guess, let's get into it here. The topic of the night is when to leave youth hockey and go to junior hockey. And I think it's an important topic, and I think it's a topic that a lot of people are confused about. I think a lot of people mess it up. And my short answer is just like my answer to a lot of things is, it's situational, really, right? Like every situation's different. It depends on the player. It depends what level of junior we're talking about. It depends what country you live in. So it really, like, again, like everybody has to remember that there's basic guidelines that everybody pretty much agrees on, but there's no rules to this stuff, right? The best path, I can't say it enough, the best path is the one that works for you. So just keep that in mind as we dive into this episode, is that, you know, your individual situation, you know, really trumps all. And, you know, but yeah, I mean, let's get into it. So, I mean, you want to start or you want me to start?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a million ways to unpack it, obviously, like you said.
Yeah.
There's so many variables. I feel like it changes too, like every couple years or so. Like I feel like when I was going through it, I'm 28, so 10, 11 years ago, I feel like everyone they wanted to play junior. And more guys would want to play tier 3 junior versus U18. I don't know why. Maybe it was just a trend. Um, and then when I was kind of getting out of it, it was definitely going back to U18, I think. And right now, I feel like it's probably still at U18. Like I feel like now more than ever, if you can play midget, right? I'm saying U18, but I guess if you can play midget, if you're midget eligible, and you're not playing tier 2 or above, like there's no reason for you to venture off into tier 3.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree for the most part. Like, obviously, you know, always exceptions, but you know, I would even say, you know, a lot of times, you know, even, you know, unless you could play, you know, unless you could play tier 1, you know, in the United States, like it really. So in Canada, most guys, they will, after 16s, they're going to go junior, whether it's, you know, major junior, junior A, junior B. You know, in Canada, you know, after U16s, that's definitely the trend, is you go play junior. Now in the United States, it's been going back and forth, to your point, Ryan. And I think an important point to realize too is, I think the quality of tier 3, I think, was better back then, right? So like I think when you saw a lot of guys leaving for tier 3 back then, they were leaving for better situations than they're leaving for today. A lot of times, not every time, but you know, I mean, like just think about, you know, like your team that you played on, in tier 3, like how many D1 commits did you guys have on that team?
Yeah, there was at least 3.
Right, like you don't really see that.
Or
You don't really see that anymore.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing that you actually helped me with going through it, and this is something that's very much easier said than done, is that you have to find someone who's going to help you move on, and not someone who's going to look to better their program because of you necessarily. Like it should be a mutual kind of thing. Like if you're going to go play tier 3, then you going there for a year or 6 months or whatever the case is, and doing your job and getting out of there to go to somewhere better, like that should be always your focus as a player. And it's hard because it's a business, and now there's so many teams, so I don't really see that much anymore. Like when I was going through it, they were like, come here, we're going to get you better, and when it's your time to leave, you leave. And that happened to a lot of guys. Like it happened to almost everyone, honestly. If you did your job, you were getting an opportunity at another level. So I think that's huge. I still know a couple guys that kind of do that, and they're bounce around different programs or whatever. But I don't think it's where you play. I think it's who you play for, and the reputation of the club and or coach to kind of help the player. Like it's got to be about the player at the end of the day, and the players have to think that way. You can't just go into it mindlessly thinking like, oh, I'm going to play here and then this is going to happen. Like there's got to be a little bit of a plan.
Yeah, 100%. And like you know, I can't stress enough too. Like it comes back to do your homework, right? Like so many guys have to do, like, you have to do your homework on these programs. You got to look at, you know, who they're advancing, where, talk to different people that have played there, because every program is going to give you the same pitch, right? It's all going to be pretty much the same. Like I've never seen a program go to recruit a kid and be like, hey, come here, we're having a tough time recruiting. We got barely any players. We don't get much support financially from the ownership. We're going to get smacked all season, and it's going to be great. Come play here, right? Like nobody says that, right? Like and again, like, I think I said this in a different episode. Like like I've seen it play out that way, but I've never heard that. I've never heard somebody say that, right? So a lot of these recruiting pitches are going to be the same. You really have to do your homework and go see it for yourself, because yeah, to your point, like unfortunately, it seems like nowadays there's programs out there that go to great lengths to not move players on. And it's one of the unfortunate realities of of the game and junior hockey, and you got to understand it for what it is. I mean, I remember one time I was I was moving a goalie to the NA years ago, and the NA team, they're like, yeah, we need a goalie. They're like, we've tried 3 different tier 3 teams to pull one up. All 3 say the goalie doesn't want to come. Thinking like, what are the chances? All 3 3 goalies don't want to go. I mean, didn't really make much sense, right? So I was able to send them a goalie, but it's just yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it seems like teams don't, they're not always in a hurry to because to think about it too, who's usually the candidate for the call up? It's their best player. It's not their worst player. It's their best player.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're trying to protect what they have as well. Like, you understand it, but it's definitely a sticky situation for sure. But that's why I think like doing your homework is huge. And if you find a place where they're like, look, we're not trying to win a championship by holding 20 guys here or 10 guys here, like we're gonna build a business off of moving guys up. Like I think the programs that do that successfully, like they have a line out the door every year.
100%. I mean, I think that's the way that you have to look at it. But I think a lot of guys are afraid to take that risk. So yes, I mean, yeah, so it's just very, very important. So, bringing us back now, in terms of tier 3 was different, 10 years ago than it is now, right? Like the quality was different. The scouting was different. The standards of the leagues were different, right? Like some of the stuff that goes on today, didn't really happen,
for sure.
Back when we played, like, which is, unfortunate, but, yeah. So, I definitely think, in terms of tier 3, I mean, I don't, if you're a U16 guy, I mean, play U16, for the most part. Again, everything, these are, generalities. There could be situations where it could make sense for you to go tier 3. And I would even say 18s. I mean, my opinion, you play your first year of 18s, and then, second year of 18s in terms of tier 3. I'd lean hard towards playing the second year of 18s, but there could be a situation where, if you have a player that's been in a powerhouse of a midget program, for 3 years, and he's thinking about going back to his 4th, right? I could see him making a change, right? Because there might be some scouts that might take the stance of like, hey man, like you played in this top end midget program for the last 3 years. All your teammates, they're all going USHL, OHL, NAHL. If you're so good, why are you still here? Like how are you still here? Right? It's like that kid might need a change of scenery, so he's not still there, right? So he's getting a little bit of a different flavor somewhere else. He's been being put into a different recruiting pool or whatever. So like that's a situation where I could think it makes sense. But I think anytime you're leaving youth hockey for junior hockey, I think you really, really have to evaluate it, because you can't get that youth hockey time back. And there's definitely situations where it makes sense to leave. And then there's other situations where I think guys are you're just in a rush, especially when we're talking about the tier 3 level, unless there's a situation, whether it's financial, like, maybe there's, some of these midget programs could be very expensive, right? And some of the tier 3 programs are much less expensive. So there could be a financial situation where it might make sense for a kid to go play tier 3 to take the burden off the family and make it the whole year less stressful, more enjoyable. Because I've said this before too, like situation A could be better than situation B, but if situation A, if the negatives are going to outweigh the positives, is it really better? Right. So like at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the player's in a situation to thrive, and he's feeling good and everything like that, and everything's good around him. So like that's a situation. Again, just it all has to be it all has to be evaluated, and because at the end of the day, there's no substitute for performance, right? Like all these different leagues, all these different levels, all that stuff like is great, but at the end of the day, the thing that matters most is your performance, right? And I can't stress that enough. I mean, so that's kind of like my opinion on on leaving for for tier 3. I mean, I don't know if you. I mean, how do you feel about it in terms of?
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar. I mean, because if you really look at it, if you're a Bantam or 15U and you're super high end, like you're identified already. Like you're getting looks from Major Junior, you're getting looks from the USHL. Like no one in the NA is probably even looking at you. Like it's probably above that. And if not, if you're not one of those guys, which is completely fine, and it's the majority, like let's not kid ourselves, obviously, like you should be playing midget. Like why would you rush something? Like we were talking before the show, kind of joking about it, but no one sets out and says, "Oh, I want to play in the EHL one day. Like I want to play in the USPHL Premier." There's nothing wrong with that, but you just shouldn't. Like that's not what you're striving for.
Right. That's not the lifelong goal. You don't grow up
Yeah,
as a kid, saying, "Man, I want to play in tier 3."
yeah,
Right. So keep
sure,
I mean, look, everybody's goal should be tier 1. Right. It should be
definitely.
USHL, major, junior. In terms of junior hockey, those are the 4 leagues to be in. That's the place to be. USHL, major, junior. No mistake about it. Right.
Yeah,
So
you want to play in the NHL, like that's what every kid should tell you, and that's what it is. You don't set the bar so low, so there's nothing wrong with going there. But I think like knowing where you're going and being at the right level is important, and also at those levels you have to play. Like so many kids that I work with, and I'm sure you work with too, they're like, "Oh, I'm probably gonna leave and go play USPHL," and I'm like, "Why?" Like, what's the reasoning? Like, I don't understand it. Again, it's not cookie cutter to everyone, but the majority, I would probably like go dominate the level. If you're that good, go dominate the level. Why would you sit there and be like a role guy at 16, 17, 18? I just don't understand it. There's going to be a time in your career where it's going to happen. So why rush it? If you can get the puck on your stick and be the guy, and get in front of maybe some scouts pending what level midget you're playing, like why would you not do that instead
right.
of go get kicked around? Like there's no D1 guys going to tier 3 games. It's just not happening, like unless there's a 15 or 16-year-old on the team.
It's probably few and far between. I
It's
mean,
not happening.
no.
So you're kind of limiting yourself, I think.
Yeah, because you still have room to grow,
Yeah,
right? Like this 15, 16, 17, 18, those are big developmental years, right? And going back to the point of every kid's, the bar should be set at tier 1, right? So, you know, tier 1 is typically recruiting out of, you know, midget at a tier 2, right? They're not really recruiting at a tier 3, right? When a USHL team or an OHL team is looking for a top end 16-year-old, well, where are the top end 16-year-olds? They're in the 16-year-old league. They're not in the tier 3 league, right? And there might, and look, there might be a couple, but again, think about it from a scouting perspective. Where's the best bang for your buck? I'm looking for 16-year-olds. Do I want to go scout the 16-year-old league, or do I want to go scout the, league that's predominantly 18, 19, 20, and there might be a 16-year-old there, and hopefully he's good, right? What's the better bang for your buck as a scout, right? You're going to go to where the 16-year-olds are.
yeah.
So,
Chances are, if there is a 16 playing in one of those leagues, they're lights out.
it's so they're going to go to where the 16-year-olds are, which is U16, and then and again, like you might have your a handful in tier 2 junior, but in terms of tier 3, junior, it's not where it's really at, right? And again, it's not, not that, like, tier three junior definitely has its place, right? There, it definitely has its place. You just, I say this all the time, different leagues, different teams, they're tools in a toolbox. You want to take out the right tool to help, to build what you need, right? Like if your window's broken, you're not going to take out the hammer, right? You got to take out the appropriate tool. So, yeah, I mean, that's my, yeah, I mean, I think we pretty much agree there. And guys, like I said, throw in your comments. Let us know where you're commenting from, so we could try to drive this more towards your situations. Um, let's jump. Let's jump to tier one now. Tier one. So if you have the opportunity to go to tier one, whether USHL or major junior, that I would say almost every time you leave. Right? There's probably a couple situations where it might make sense to stay. But I mean, my opinion, if you have the opportunity to go play in one of those tier one leagues, if you don't take it, it's almost like what are we doing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I feel like if you are one of those guys and you're younger, you're there because you're highly sought after, and they're going to massage you, and you're going to have a leash, and maybe you don't play a ton, but you're there for the long haul for the most part. It's not, you're not there for 1 year and they're going to kick you to the curb. Like they're investing in you for sure.
Yeah, I mean, tier one's just a different beast altogether. The three major junior leagues, the USHL, it's just a completely different animal than anything else really. Yes, I mean, I think that if a player has like that, yes, that makes sense to leave. If you have an opportunity to go, I think you leave for. You know, um, and like Ryan said, like they're because they're investing in you at that point, right? Like especially at the major junior level, right? Like we're talking school packages, we're talking they're tons of equipment and all that stuff. Like they're really taking care of you. Like I remember when I was in camp in Guelph in the OHL, like the Bauer guy came in and he was measuring everybody's feet or whatever for skates, and it was like down like the quarter of an inch. Like somebody would have like a 9 1/2 on their right foot, and then a 9 3/8 on their left foot. Like they're it's just a whole different animal. They're spending a lot of money on those programs, and um, and like I said, that's the bar. Like that's where everybody should be looking at. That's the major juniors, the number one producer, to the NHL in terms of junior hockey. USHL is the number one producer, of you know college, in terms of junior hockey. So like they're just completely different animals. I know somebody's going to be like, oh, the USHL produces more than some major junior leagues. They don't. You got to take out the NTDP, and you also got to look at the USHL doesn't send many guys directly to the NHL, right? They're going to college first. So college would be the producer of those guys to the NHL, right? Guys will go directly from major junior to the NHL. Guys from the USHL, they're typically going to college first. So in terms of, guys going directly from a junior league to the NHL, the major junior is the number one producer. So yeah, no, but yeah, now I think here's where things get the trickiest, right? Because I think tier three, it's a pretty blanket, for the most part, definitely not all the part, look to, stay in youth unless there's certain situations, arise. Tier one, it's pretty much, again, not all, but most, it's, hey, take the opportunity. Tier two, I think this is where where a big gray area can be. Um, especially in the United States. Like I said, Canada is like more, I feel like Canada is more just like black and white. Like, after 16s, most guys are going to junior. Like I said, wherever they fall, whether it's, majors, junior A, junior B, like after 16, they're all, a lot of those guys, they're going. In the US, it's, and like we talked about earlier on, it's it's always changing. The landscape's always changing. Um, what's your opinion on tier two? Do you go or do you stay?
I think it really depends like again, you want to play if you're an 18-year-old and maybe you need a change, then I would say it's probably a good idea. And if you're a little bit younger, I think it's got to be a controlled situation where you know you're going to play, or you have to be with the mindset that you're there and you're going to kind of wait your turn. I think a lot of it's up to the player because the maturity is a big factor. Like you have to realize that you're there for a reason, and maybe you're not going to play a regular shift. Maybe you're not even going to dress half the games, but it really depends. Personally, I don't know if I could have went and sat somewhere. I just don't know if I could have did it. But maybe if they're like, hey, wait your turn, your next year. You're gonna practice, you're gonna play 20 games. Like there's a lot to be said for that. Like you're practicing against those guys every day. It's definitely gonna get you better. But I don't know. I don't think there's a cookie cutter response.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is like it's like that situation. Like if you're going to get scratched half the games, I would say staying, in midget, right? And it depends, it depends where at too. Like let's say we're talking about the North American League, right? Like if you're going to get scratched half the games in the North American League, I would say you're in the wrong tier two junior league, right? I would say you should be in, the OJHL or the Manitoba League or something like that, right? Like if you're, and that's the other thing that I think a lot of people really, really mess up is, they down here in the United States, like they'll focus on the North American Hockey League, and then if that doesn't work, they're just like they forget that there's 10 tier two junior A leagues in Canada, right? Like obviously they the next step down here would be the NCDC, but I feel like a lot of people forget that. It's like if a player has an opportunity to to be a to go to to go to North American League, but he's going to be a scratch 50% of the time, I would say you're placed incorrectly. I would say at that point you should be in one of the Canadian leagues that falls somewhere in between the North American League and Tier 3, right? Or something like the NCDC. Because, I am a big believer of gameplay. Like, I think you got to play games. I think, the practice is great. But like, I think there's also things that games, definitely teach is, you know, like there's nothing that simulates the pressure of a game, right? There's nothing, learning how to play under pressure, learning how to travel and play, learning how to play back to backs, that kind of stuff. And again, let's be completely honest. Anytime anybody talks about a player, what's the first thing they do? They get to his elite prospects page, right? And the numbers, like it or not, fair or not, whatever or not, the numbers are the first impression. If you don't have numbers because you weren't playing, and when you were playing, you were barely playing, like like when you were dressed and playing, you weren't getting many shifts, right? It could really create a a not so good stat line. And again, that's again, like it or not, fair or not, that's the first impression. So I think even from that standpoint, it's because again, like it shows what you did, right? And when you read that stat line, okay, this kid played half the games in the North American League, right? All that says to anybody is he wasn't good enough to play them all, right? And in my, and I think a lot of people out there, again, barring it's a super young, you know, kid that's going to be right at home the next year, for the most part, people don't care about the story, right? They don't care about the why. It's just like, all right, he wasn't good enough, right? Like, so I think that that's something to keep, I think that's, very important for people to remember when, why you have to be playing at the appropriate level in the appropriate league, because it really just, again, to me, it's just, just so important.
Yeah, for sure. I
So,
agree.
I mean, now should a guy leave youth to go play tier two? I think it depends on the youth team. I think it depends on the tier two league. I mean, like look, like if you have an opportunity to leave youth and go play, you know, for Fred in Penticton with the Penticton Bees, I mean, you could argue that Penticton's better than some of the USHL programs, right? Like Penticton's in the BCHL. I think last year, I think they had two NHL draft picks last year. One of them in the first round. Like like they're doing what some major junior teams are doing there. You know, um, so I think it really depends. I mean, in terms of you know again, it's a tough call. This is why I wanted to spend more time on the tier two, because I think it's less black and white. I think because again, it also comes back to, well, what's the goal, right? The goal for junior obviously is tier one, right? So if a player has the opportunity to leave and go play in the second best league, right? If we're talking NA, second best league in the United States, well, if he's going to be a marginal player in that league, is that better than just ripping up his youth league and making a push for, tier one the next year, right? And it also depends on the age, right? Like if you're a second year 18 player, I would say, yeah, leave and go to the NA, right? Like if you're like a super young guy, like if you were, an 07 this year or something, that I could see, all right, maybe you play, it really, like right off the bat, it takes a special 07 to play in the NA, last year. So I'd be like 08's playing this year. But, so if an 08 this year had an opportunity to leave and go to the NA, I mean, again, like I think that player, if he's going to get buried in the NA, I don't think it's worth it. Because again, we're talking about the second best league, right? And, I would like to think that if he could play in the NA and do well, he should destroy his midget league and stick out like a sore thumb, right? Like and again, the league might be getting more, a ton of traction for tier one. Again, it's a tough situation. Like it depends on the player, right? And if we're talking about NA, we have to also remember like the style of the league, right? It's a heavy league, right? So it takes a special midget age player to play in that league, just based on the style of it alone, right? Can you physically handle the NA? Some players might be skilled enough and gifted enough, but they may just not have hit their growth spurt yet, right? So there's like that stuff to look into as well.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. Like there's no right answer. It's per player for sure. Like on a player to player basis, there's so many variables. It's really tough. It's tough because then you get into like if you're a younger guy, maybe you're committed already, maybe you have a good relationship with the coach, maybe you're gonna have the longest leash in history, and you're never gonna get in trouble. But go look at the rosters, like how many guys are there like that? So if you're one of those guys, you probably know. You probably know. If you're not, then you should kind of look in the mirror and be real about where you're at, because getting buried for a year, whether they promise playtime the following or not, versus being a guy and playing every shift, PK, power play, like that's a huge difference from a developmental perspective.
Yeah, because my feeling too is like I'm a big fan of, you don't ever play anywhere for what it will hopefully turn into, right? Like like for you to commit to a team and play there for a whole year, getting buried on the promise that you're going to be a big player for them the following year, right? Like you got to keep your development moving 100 miles an hour forward, right? Like you got to do what's best for you. And the goal is you want, 10 teams in the league to want you the following year, not just all your hopes riding on one, right? You don't want to bury yourself. And then, and again, like we're talking tier two right now, right? Tier one is a completely different animal. But like talking tier two right now, you want to do whatever's going to help you, just keep progressing forward through hockey, right? And then the goal, like if we're talking NA, right? Like the goal is you want half of the league wanting you the following year, right? So do what's going to make half the league want you. Don't do what's going to make this one team hopefully keep their promise, right? Because I mean, we've all seen how that goes a lot of times too.
You can't trust what they're saying either. Like, not to throw anyone under the bus or anything, but a lot from the business side of it, things change too. If three guys get pushed down from the level above you, like they're not they're not hanging on to you just because. It is what it is. Sorry. Like we just got better. Like you got to get better too. Like you can't you can't just wait around like you're saying. It just doesn't work like that.
They're always trying to better themselves, right? Like, and that's not a bad thing. You just,
No, they should be.
yeah, you understand it and play the game accordingly. Play the chess match. Like, you know, for anyone out there that hasn't seen it, Ryan and I did a video. It's probably like what? That was probably like 3 years ago now, right? That we did in Brick.
It's a little while ago, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
and it was about what was more important. I think what was it? It was development or winning, if I remember correctly, in junior hockey, and the answer was winning. And we laid it out why winning is number one, and why it works like that, and why it has to work like that. So if you guys haven't seen that video, go watch it. It's on the Swan Hockey YouTube channel. It's titled "I Gave the Real Answer About Junior Hockey." And again, it's not bad. Like it's just it's how it is, right? And it truly has to work like that. Like the winning has to be number one in junior hockey, and we laid it out why it works like that, how it works, why it works, and why it has to work like that. And if you watch it, I think it's going to make a lot of sense to you. And again, like knowledge is power. You want to use that, and put that, have that in your head when navigating this, this journey, because it's a crazy journey, but when it's navigated right, it's awesome. So, yeah, if you haven't seen that, definitely go check that out. And because yeah, like if you are, that's the other thing too. Like if you are jumping into junior hockey, especially at the, it's a business. It is, right? And it 100% is a business. And you got to remember at the NA level and the USHL level and major junior level, you're not paying to play, right? You're not a paying customer, so that is important to realize too. And things work differently in those leagues, and even in tier 3. I mean, they tier 3 they operate like a tier 2 that almost like a tier 2 mentality that you have to pay for, right? You got to pay for you got to pay for everything, but they they kind of operate the same way. I mean, anybody that thinks that this isn't true, I said it in the video and I'll say it again, go find me an NA team that didn't make any roster transactions. If you think that, no, it's not all about the winning, it's about development and it's about the kids and it's about the college, go find me a team that didn't try to better themselves. Go, like, every team picked a team at camp, right? Go find me a team that stuck with the same players that they picked. They didn't have to pick them. They picked them. Go find me a team that stuck with the same players that they picked all season long, and put it in the comments, right? I challenge somebody to do that. That video's been up for 3 years. Nobody's done it yet. There's been one coach that I know of that he made one roster transaction all year in the NA. One. Right? He was the closest, still wasn't what I said, but he was the closest to it. And you want to know what he had to do that following summer? Go look for a new job. So it's unfortunate, but it's, I mean, I shouldn't even say it's unfortunate. I mean, it is what, like, again, like, they're not, the team's expected, it's a business. The team's expecting something of you. They're not charging, they're paying all your bills, right? It's not free. It's free for you because they're paying it, right? And they're paying for you to be there, and they're expecting something of it, right? They're expecting something from you. And
yeah, you got to be good.
Yeah, and
it's not easy to be good every night, especially like you're playing all these games, 50, 60, 70 games. You got to be good. It's a big jump. Like, why should they keep you? Think about, if there's any players on here, think about how many times you reached out to a coach, right? These guys, especially the higher up, they're getting emails and texts and calls every day. It's got to get sift through. Like, there's 1,000 kids waiting to take your spot. It's cliche, but it's real.
100%. And it's human nature, right? It's like with anything. Like, I mean, how many of you guys out there sit there screaming at your TVs watching an NHL game? Oh, this guy sucks, get him out of here. Talking about an NHL player. Oh, he sucks, get this guy off the team. Right? Like, or same thing, like if you're doing like fantasy hockey or fantasy football, you're making moves to win. It's the same thing. Right? So you get it. You just don't, a lot of people don't, understand that it, correlates to this as well, that it's, you know, that it's the same thing, right? So it's yeah, like I think people, like, I always say a lot, like hockey's no different than anything else in life. And, so you guys certainly understand the mentality because you guys do it screaming at your TV. You do it playing fantasy football, or fantasy hockey. The NA coaches, USHL coaches, every level, in junior, they do the same thing. And honestly, I would even say some of the higher end youth programs are getting to be like that now too. I mean, like I spoke with a guy, a couple, a guy I'm friends with a couple, I don't know, probably about a month ago, and he was saying, he's like, it's crazy. He's like, the top end U16, top end U18 teams, like they're recruiting like it's the NHL now. Like those teams are, everybody's handpicked. They're all billeting. They're all, and it's very, it's very, it could be very cutthroat. I mean, I had a U16 coach tell me, not too long ago, tell me, like, we're talking about a player. He's like Eric. If I take him and he's no good, he goes, he's sitting on the bench. I'm not playing him, and he's not getting money back. That was like his opening conversation to me. Like, I've never talked to the guy before. Like, that was my first conversation with him. Like, we have a mutual friend, and mutual friend put us in touch. I talked to the guy, and, that's U16.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the standard now. Like,
I'm happy he was honest with me, right? Like, that's all I could ask for, right?
Yeah, but look at all these programs. Like, everyone's flying all over the country. You're going to all these showcases. You're playing in these different leagues, which is great. Like, it's not a bad thing. But think of all the money that they're investing. Like, again, it's a business. Like, all these rinks now, everyone has a gym, everyone has a trainer, everyone has Instat, everyone has Bauer gear, CCM gear, whatever it is. Like, it's not a joke anymore. Like, not to say that it was, but I'm just saying it's way more dialed in. Like, I feel like when I was going through it 10 years ago, if your rink had a gym, like, you were lucky.
Yeah,
Like,
that was like, yeah.
or it wasn't on Instagram. It didn't have 25,000 views. Now these programs, you're getting full social media coverage. You're on all these different platforms. You're getting guys, probably you're getting exposure you don't even realize now from guys just looking at their phone or whatever. Like, I think it's way more serious, but I think it's good because I think all the players and the parents, I think they want it. Yeah, it costs more and everyone complains about it, but at the end of the day, I think people want that.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point, like that's why it's also like important to do this the right way because you guys are spending a lot of money on it, right? Like you want to make sure that you're educating yourselves, like you want to make sure, and you want to make sure that that your player is, you know, invested in this too, like that he's taking this seriously and he's going to be using the gym and he's going to be doing those things because it's a lot of money to spend to jerk around, right? And like that's the thing, like like I think the doing your homework now I think is more important than ever because there's just so much. I mean, especially like like we're talking about differences between now and 10 years ago. I mean, look at like when I first started on the business side of hockey, there was USA Hockey and Hockey Canada, right? And then there was like one or two like renegade leagues, and you know that like we're on the side of caution with those leagues, but like everything was smaller, everything was in a box, everything was controlled. Right now, everybody's their own governing body. I mean, like the NCDC and the USPHL, they make up their own, they beat to the beat of their own drum. The EHL beats to the beat of their own drum. Now the BCHL beats to the beat of their own drum. Like it's really crazy right now. There's so much out there, and there's so much, and with guys beating to the beat of their own drum, right? That's got positives and negatives, and some of the positives are obviously that they could improve upon some things that maybe they felt USA Hockey and Hockey Canada didn't have right. But then also the negatives is they could literally do whatever they want, right? It's like some of the, what's going on with some of these organizations. It's really, really like, I mean, it's like piss poor. Like some of the standards are just, some of the like what some of the teams are doing and how the players are, like even like like I've heard horror stories. I mean, you know, of
Yeah,
like
for sure.
players, like with living conditions and stuff, and stuff
Signing
that
30 guys, signing 40 guys, kicking them
yeah,
down a rung to the P team or the elite team or whatever. It's crazy.
yeah. So like I think that's I think it's more I think people have to be more careful than ever now because it's not like it's not governed. I mean, like even like one like the USPHL. I mean, like I feel like I think like obviously they just had a change in commissioner and everything. Gunty from Black Bears, at the helm of the USPHL and the NCDC now, but like so we'll see what happens. But like I know in years past, like it just like rules seem to come and go. Some of the teams didn't even know what the rules were. Like in terms of like trade deadline and stuff. Like I would talk to one team and be like, "Oh, we trade deadline's this," and next team would be like, "Oh, I don't know." And next team would be like, "Oh, it just got extended." Like like it just it's like that's some of the stuff too, like where like where some of the stuff could be very loose, and yeah, I mean, like you just got to be careful, and like that goes, especially going into like what we're talking about tonight about when you're leaving youth hockey. I mean, you want to make sure that you're leaving for a good situation, not one that again, like especially if you're a 16-year-old and now you're going to go billet. Well, what's the billet situation that you're walking into, right? Like if it's not regulated, well, what
Someone
is it?
gets out of control.
Yeah,
I'll share a story that I won't name where it was, but I went there, was promised a bill of goods, and I think I was 19, and I showed up, and the billet house was with the assistant coach, and there was no like lighting in the house. They had to have lamps all over the place. There was 4 bedrooms, a small living room. Everyone had a bed that was on the floor. It was like a trap house. And I told them I said if you guys don't figure this out, like I'm leaving. Like it's just not happening.
yeah,
It's not going to work. And you guys have to put your feet down, like because they'll abuse it. And then I'm talking with the guys I'm supposed to be playing with. They're like, yeah, we get $150 a week for food. We get $150 a week for food for the house. And I was like, what?
for everybody.
For everyone? There's 5 guys.
Yeah,
It's what are we doing?
yeah,
Out of control. And like I've heard much worse. So that's just something that I experience. It's like it happens. It probably happens to almost everyone.
absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna name names, but like you, but I mean, I remember when I was food shopping, and I know exactly the place that you're talking about. I know you're gonna know exactly the place I'm talking about. I was food shopping with the GM of the team for the billet house, and I'm with them. This was many years ago, and we're getting food for the house, and he's like checking the prices on everything, which is fine. Like I get it, and and you know he puts a thing of hamburgers in the cart, and I'm like, all right, like let's go get hamburger rolls. He's like, hamburger rolls for what? I'm like, you just put burgers in the cart. They need rolls. He's like, we got to get them rolls. He's like, but we already got white bread. I'm like, yeah, but just 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 get the rolls. And he like stops and pauses and looks like he just discovered fire. And he's like, patty melts. Don't make patty melts. I'm like, what's a patty melt? He's like, it's an open faced burger sandwich. It's a burger on a piece of bread with no lid. I'm like, all right. And then and then we checked out. He proceeded to not pay for a sub that he had that was at the bottom of the cart. I'm like, hey, your sub, like we just got checked out and paid. I'm like, oh, you forgot your sub on the bottom. He's like, oh, just go. Like, like it's crazy.
Yeah, it's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, it's nuts. Like, I mean, I had a player one time. I had a player one time from the NCDC that told me he was driving himself 3 hours to an away game, 3 hours back. hopefully that's not going on anymore. Like that was many, many years ago. But, kid was driving his own car to an away game. 3 hours there, played a game, 3 hours back. Like
Yeah. The thing is,
that's
no
not
one
junior A.
knows.
That's a joke.
Yeah. Like no one knows. Like you don't know until it happens to you. And no one's going to tell you that stuff. Like no one's going to tell you how it really is until you get there. So you really gotta, like, it's a tough spot. I get it, especially if you're younger and you get into a situation, you get there and you might be like, whoa, like what is this? Like you gotta stand up for yourself. You have to. And if that means getting out or whatever, like you have to do it. If you think you need to.
Yeah, bottom line, like just do your homework, and just you really, really got to be careful with what you're leaving for. I mean, there's some tremendous opportunities out there. Like there is great opportunities in the NCDC, in the NA, in the USHL, OHL, all of it. And there's some great opportunities. There's great opportunities in Tier 3 too, right? Like I said at the beginning of the show, Tier 3 definitely has a purpose. It's a purpose. Um, and listen, the other thing too is to, and this probably takes a more mature player, but is to identify, if you could identify your path and your goals, right? If you identify your path and your goals, and let's say you're a guy that, is playing, 18s or whatever, and you identify that, okay, listen, I'm most likely, I'm a tier 3 guy, and most likely I'm a division 3 guy. Okay, well, if you've identified that and you've accepted that, well, now leaving to go to EHL might make perfect sense, right? So it also depends on on that too. Like again, like there's just so many different situations out there, and that's why you want to play at the highest level you can, where you're going to make where you're going to get regular playing time, and you're going to make an impact. But like I said, it's got to be at the at the right level, at the I shouldn't say the highest level, I should say like the most prestigious level, right? Because like technically speaking, the bottom of the barrel tier 3 junior is technically a higher level than U18, right? So I should say the more play at the most prestigious level you can, where you're gonna get a regular shift, and you're gonna be an impact player and have success with those shifts. So
Yeah.
sorry, what?
No, you say all the time, performance is king. And then
Yeah.
the other thing that settled with me like years ago, and I believe it came from you as well, is like, do you want to play in the league or do you want to be a player in the league?
Yes.
And that's something that, like, it's not that deep, but if you can figure it out and be real with yourself, like it's a huge difference. It really is. Like if you go somewhere and you do well, you're gonna get an opportunity. If you don't, then you probably won't. And there's definitely the situations where kids get screwed or whatever, but to your point earlier, like no one wants to hear the story. They don't care. So if you perform and you do well, you probably will get an opportunity. It's just what it is.
Yeah, and it all goes back to performing, right? Like if you got screwed, okay, there's
Again,
there's like 200 junior A teams in Canada, right? There's what 30 something in the NA,
yeah.
20 in the NCDC or whatever it is, about that, right? You know, however many in the USHL, and then another 60 or whatever major junior. If you're that good and you quote unquote got screwed, well, if you're that good, you'll play on a different team. If
For
you
sure.
can't make any other of the 300 teams out there, well, maybe you're not that good. Maybe you didn't get screwed. Maybe you're just not that good. So that's why I always, for me, yeah, performance is number one. Because if your performance is there, and somebody wants to, screw you, who cares? If your performance is there, like I said, you just go play on one of the other 300 teams. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Like you can't keep a good man down. Like, so that's why for me, like the performance is number one. The performance is the most important thing you guys have in this game. It's not a team. It's not a league. It's not a level. It's not an advisor. It's not a coach. It's the number one thing you guys have in this game is performance.
Definitely.
So, You know, I mean, does anybody have any questions? It's been an extremely quiet group. Um, if anybody has any questions, put them, put them, put them up here now. I mean, like, look, like, obviously, you've been running a hockey development company for, however many years now. What do in terms of development, like, how do you see the stuff that you're teaching translating, because this is another way to look at this too, right? Like, so the stuff that you're teaching in, all these, private sessions and everything, how do you see that translating, like the player's ability to translate it to a game, and how quickly are they able to translate it to a game? And what do you think about that in terms of, hey, we're working on, A, B, and C. Yeah, it's going to be easier to, maybe translate it in the youth game before trying to work on this in the junior game, or what's your opinion on, in that area, in the development,
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. I think obviously, again, it's like on a per player basis. Um, I think a lot of the things that we do or that I like to teach, it's kind of situations that are all game relative. That it's not exactly something you may use 100 times a game. It's some things that I like to work on when you're in odd positions and maybe like a bad pass or in a weird situation coming out off the wall, out of the corner, whatever. There's a ton of different things you could talk for days on it, but I think doing things like that and getting quality reps with guys in doing things maybe that aren't like normal in come game time. I think that really helps, and I think slowing it down and really talking to them about some of this stuff so they can visualize it and really see where it applies come game time, because there's a time and a place, I think, for just kind of buzzing around, throwing a bunch of cones, pucks, bridges, whatever the case is, and just having like a workout. But
yeah,
especially for the younger guys to really be able to conceptualize what we're trying to do on the ice and see how they can use it into a game immediately. Like I think that's the biggest thing. And a lot of it really isn't on me or our coaches. It's on the kids. And what I say to them is what I like to do is we'll do a couple minute warm up, couple different drills, pending the group size. Let's say it's a group of 5. They're all relatively same age and skill. We'll do a couple drills, have a couple concepts, and then I like to ask them, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And sometimes you get really more times than not, you're like, I don't know, or I don't care.
yeah,
And I'm like, well, how do you not know? Number one, and how do you not care? And a lot of them think I'm just busting their balls or being annoying, talking down to them, but it's really not that. It's like I use this example almost every day. It's like when you go to the gym, do you just walk into the gym and are like, yeah, I'm just gonna bench today, I guess? Or do you go in there with a plan, a detailed regimen with 45 to 90 minutes, maybe you have a trainer. Like if you do have a trainer, you definitely have a routine and you probably know like, oh, Monday I have this, Tuesday I have this, Wednesday is this. Like you it's the same thing with on the ice. Maybe it doesn't have to be that in depth and we don't have to say Johnny's got to take 100 shots today and 50 are backhand, but some concepts maybe your coach has been telling you, you know, you stink at this, or I played on Saturday and this happened and I was pissed at myself. I didn't know what to do. Like I want to work on that with you. Like how do you that's where you get better, especially over the summer. Like if you have an advisor or you have someone, a coach or whatever that sees you play games regularly, like because I can come up with drills by myself all day long, like it doesn't matter, right? But we're here for you, so I want to help you get better at what you need to get better at. That's kind of my stance on it. Like we can go all day long and just rip around cones, shoot a million pucks, but I think especially with the younger guys, like and even the pro guys too, like you need to know like what you want to get better at or what you need to get better at because I think it'll translate immediately. If you could figure it out, a couple tweaks here or there, like you're good.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we got a comment here from our buddy Jimmy Skills. He was on last week. And this kind of leads me into, to my next question for you. So Jimmy commented, do you think hockey IQ is not taught enough as much as stick handling, skating, shooting, etc.?
Yeah, I think definitely. Like, I think it's definitely a hard thing to teach in the sense of, like, if I'm teaching you on a private lesson, let's say, or there's a group of 5, like we're just going around doing a couple different things, it may be hard for players to visualize like the situation on the ice versus what they're doing. Like if I throw a cone on 5 feet inside the neutral zone dot and I'm trying to work on like taking the middle, then coming back out, like some guys, you probably can't process that, which is fine. Like some of the stuff, it might be better done on video, like doing video with guys. And maybe the video is done of the skill drills. Like we've done that before too, where like, and you take what you're doing in the drill and then you compare it to like an NHL clip of guys doing something. Like I think 100%. Like what I like to teach and what I tell guys, especially ones who are newer to working with me, is like you should know where to be on the rink like at all times without the puck. And if you're talking about to get the puck or to put the puck on net or whatever, like you should know before anything even happens when the play's developing, like you should be here. If I get the puck, I should put the puck here. The D is going to be there when the forward's here. Like, again, it's so fast. You're going to make mistakes, but you want to be making less mistakes. And I think you do that by watching video, by comparing your game versus NHL clips and talking to guys about it. And you got to like, you got to want to do it. It doesn't just happen. You can't just show up, skate with us for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours a week, and then be like, yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
Like it's not like it's deeper than that. And there's a lot to be said for just some guys have the knack for it and some don't. And if you're one of the guys who people say, oh, you don't have hockey IQ or you need to work on that, like that's what you should be doing. Like that's what you should be doing is working on that side of the game. Maybe you could skate 1,000,000 miles an hour. Maybe you could shoot 100 miles an hour. But if you don't know how to play, like you're never going to get the puck.
Yeah, no, for sure. We got a couple more comments coming in. So Randall commented, we have definitely landed on the email list for camps. Goalies are always on the contact us before registration list. What do you advise in order to stand out a bit more so you get selected? Randall, I'm assuming you're referring to NA camps, NCDC camps, USHL camps. You could just throw it in the comments. I believe that's what Randall is referring to. Yeah, so Randall, if you could just throw that in there, we'll be able to get to this. But yes, like everything that you were just talking about, Ryan, like I think it all goes back to, correct me if I'm wrong, but like it all goes back to like, having a purpose, right? And doing everything, having a plan, having a purpose going into it. And I think that's very important for a lot of, players and parents out there to realize that there's a big difference between a skill session and an on ice workout, right? Because like we've all seen, coaches that, do what would be considered a workout where there's not really, a whole lot of hockey situation stuff going on. And, it looks cool to the uneducated parent, right? They're, jumping over crates, diving under sticks, it looks like they're going through a thing of like, Mario Party or whatever. And, but really it's like, you look at some of it, it's like, well, what's the kid actually learning? What's he doing? How's him, skating around with a tire around his neck going to make him better,
Yeah. I mean, there's a time and a place for sure. Like there's a time and a place. Like I think if you think that you focus in a small group and you can like visualize things and you want to learn, like I think getting in a small group setting with someone who's going to teach you things will help you 100x versus just going out there and buzzing around. Like, and it's at every level. It's at every level. Like
Yeah.
if you want to go out and just get a couple touches, move the puck, get a couple shots, like go get a workout in, like no problem. But a lot of the stuff that I like to do, really because everyone needs it. Like you can never not get too good, right? Like you need to keep doing that stuff. I tell the guys all the time,
Even the
slow down.
NHL guys are doing it.
Yeah, like slow down.
Yeah.
It's more of a mental sweat than anything. There's no point of you just going through it and you're fumbling the puck, you're missing the net, you're overhandling it, whatever the case is. You're running into the cone, you're running into the wall. You like just slow down and focus on what it is.
Yeah. Now, here's a question I have for you. So somebody, somebody that works with, NHL guys all the way down to 6-year-olds. And I'll tell you where I'm going with this in a minute, but how many so what you're doing with the NHL guys, what you're doing with the 6-year-olds, and maybe a little bit higher than the 6-year-olds, but what you're doing with the NHL guys versus the younger guys, how much those two worlds collide? Like how much of the stuff is extremely similar? Like in terms of drills and concepts and what you're working on, and
I mean, I think
the fundamentals.
I think the fundamentals and the basics are very similar. Like some of the stuff's very, very similar. But for the pro guys or the college guys or whatever, there might be just more layers to it. There might be a couple different variations that you would never even introduce to the younger kids. But the fundamentals are there. Like just a dumb example is last summer we had a really good group of the worst kid on the ice was probably like a low end Division One kid out of 12 guys, and the best kid was guy who has 100 NHL games played. We start the practice or the session full ice, no pucks, inside edge, outside edge, couple different transitions, just skating, and it's like they want to do it. Like I talk with them about a practice plan the night before, typically, of what we want to get accomplished, and then I go out there and put it together. But we do the same stuff with peewees, bantams. Like it's obviously way more dumbed down, but with the midgets, it's like the same thing. And for the first couple weeks, if we introduce something new, like last year, I learned some new skating techniques, and we started doing it some edge work, and like the pro guys are falling down.
Yeah.
But then 2 hours later,
I
go on the ice with the U16 kids. They're looking at me cross-eyed like they don't want to do it because they're too good for it, and I just laugh because, and it's funny to me because like growing up, I never did this stuff. I never did it. Like I only really started getting trained privately when I was like 18, 19. That's because I would work at night, make $100, and then get up at 4:35 to go pay the skating instructor. Like I never had the opportunity to do this kind of stuff. So it's funny to me that like to Jimmy's skills comment before, everyone's stick handling, all that kind of stuff. Like the skating and the fundamentals, it's all the same. Like you see clips of it now. Like if there's someone in the NHL, like a good example would be like Ovechkin. He hasn't scored a goal in a while. Like then you'll see a clip of him on TSN or something shooting 100 pucks, 100 one-timers from his spot. Like you don't need a million cones or a crazy amount of stuff. Like sometimes just a pile of pucks and a coach to kind of tweak a couple things. It's like you looking in the mirror at the gym.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, no, and it's, happy you said that. I mean, I figured that's how you were going to answer. And, where I was going with this was, because I actually had the conversation with one of my guys this morning, is that I think a lot of people forget that, the NHL players, they're NHL players because they are extremely great and extremely consistent at the basics. The basics get done correctly every single time, right? And then yes, then they add that layer of the high-end skill onto it. But the basics get done every single time and get done correctly. And it's funny because I'm sure you've seen it too, like where I'm sure you've seen it more than I do just because of your line of work. But like have a player that's like working on this, working on that, working on the Michigan, working on whatever. But it's like, hey, don't forget to catch the pass, please. Like,
Yeah.
like and they don't want to work on, that kind of stuff. Like even, I mean, like here's an example like I gave a while ago, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as a skill development guy. I had a player one year call me, and he's like, oh, I think I want to trade. I'm like, why? What's going on? And he's like, well, our practices suck. I'm like, all right, why do your practices suck? He's like, well, we do the same thing every time. I'm like, okay. I'm like, so you're a master at that, right? Well, I mean, I don't know, and I asked him for an example of a drill, and then I gave him, I think the drill he gave me was just that opening horseshoe drill, right? That we've all done 1,000 times ever since we could skate, right? Like, start in one corner, skate down, loop around, get a pass from the other corner, come down and shoot, right? And he was playing junior, and he's like, I don't want, this drill. It's boring. We do it every day. And I asked him like, well, how are all your details in the drill? Like, what does it look like? And he didn't really know what I was talking about. And I'm like, all right, let me ask you this: when the coach blows his whistle, how are your first 3 steps coming off the goal line to rip down to the other end, right? How are your first 3 steps? How are your strides? When you get down to the other end, are you yelling at your teammate, calling for the pass? When you get the pass, are you accelerating back down the ice, or do you slow down now because you have a puck on your stick, right? Is your head up the whole time? How's your zone entry angle, right? When you enter the zone, how's your shot? Is it hard? Is it accurate? Is it on net after you shoot the puck? Are you stopping in front of the net for a rebound, or are you just one of the lazy guys that curls off to the corner? And he's kind of like, oh, I didn't think about any of that, right? So he's just going through the motions, like I would say majority of the players do, right? But like when you look at a drill so simple like that, there's so much to unpack just in that one, stupid, silly little drill, right? It's like by the end of my conversation with the kid, he's like, all right, I'm, can't wait for practice tomorrow so I can work on the horseshoe drill, right? Like, and it's like, I mean, like I want to know your thoughts on that, and then maybe just touch on that, like of just how to, like just practicing the right way from a development standpoint and not wasting your time, and because like you're never staying the same, right? You're always getting a little bit better. You're always getting a little worse, right? You're never staying the same. So every time you're on the ice, you're either developing positive muscle memory or developing negative muscle memory, right? So you want to make it positive muscle memory.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's way different than a team practice because, like, even the teams that I've coached, if you have a team of 20, just for example, and you have 5 kids kind of checked out, your practice is probably going to suck. Just because, like, they're going to affect the other guys, they're going to be talking, they're going to be not paying attention, and maybe it affects the coach more than it does the players. But the player, like, if you're not dialed in, and you're not checked in for a team practice, then it's very hard to get something positive accomplished, in my opinion.
Yeah.
From like a training session perspective, everyone's paying extra for it. There's no one holding a gun to their head to be there. Like, they come if they want. And I think they're way more in tune to listening and being focused, even with the younger kids. Like, it goes without saying for the older guys, for sure, like for
Yeah.
most of them anyway. But if you don't come with the mentality to work, and work can be physical and or mental, like, you're not going to get anything done. Like, you have to worry about the details. I skated today, and I'm another coach is running the drills. I'm just watching. I haven't said a word for 20 minutes, and then we stop it after a couple drills go by. I'm like, guys, you guys kind of suck today. Like, your habits are terrible. And they're looking at me like I'm crazy, and I'm just like, look, this is why. Like, what you're doing isn't even realistic. Like, it's not even game applicable. The drill is whatever, like what we're doing, you can do all over the ice, but you're just not, like, just slow it down. Think about what you're doing and what you're trying to get accomplished. If you don't do that, you're wasting your time. And I feel like to piggyback off that, it's hard to realize and think like that. Like I probably didn't start thinking like that till 17, 18. And like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
too late. Like if you can master that when you're, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, like that's pretty good. And
Yeah.
it
It's why
doesn't,
that's sorry, go ahead.
no, it just doesn't start. It doesn't start on the ice. Like again, another example. I don't know if this kid's listening or not, but he texts me. He's like, "Oh, I can't skate today. I pull my hamstring." I'm like, "What happened?" He's like, "Oh, He's like, "I lifted after we skated yesterday." He's like, "Now I'm rolling out and stretching like I don't normally do." And I'm like, "Well, how do you not normally do that? You're 17 years old. Like you can't just show up and skate and think you're going to be good. Like if you really want to get everything out of it, like you should be showing up 30, 40 minutes to your training session getting warmed up. Forget a game or a practice. Like your routine should be the same. If you're really trying to be at the highest level possible, that's what you should be doing. And that should be like the base, not like forcing you to do it. You should want to do it.
Yeah, 100%. Because that's interesting because it like, it also like it plays into the consistency, right? Like you got to be consistent. Like I had a kid one year that called me and he was struggling and everything and he's like, man, I just don't know what it is. I can't put my game together. I'm like, well, what's going on? He's like, I don't know. I did everything right. I woke up. I ate this for breakfast. I took a nap at this time. I had this for lunch. Yada yada yada. And he's like, I did all my warm up routines, and you know, I'm just not playing well. I said, all right. I said, what? I said, how's your practices? He's like, oh, I'm great in practice. I said, well, what do you do on a practice day? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what do you do on a practice day? What do you eat? He's like, I don't know, McDonald's. He's like, I don't do anything. He goes, and then, and he's like, I show up and yeah, I just play and, have fun. And, which is, again, like, you should be prepping for practice. But where I'm going with this is what I said to the kid. I'm like, all right, so let me get this straight. Monday through Thursday, you do X. And then game day, you do something completely different and you're not playing well.
Huh.
He's like, oh yeah, now I think I get it. I'm like, yeah, like, like you got to find that consistency. And it doesn't mean be consistent with McDonald's and not doing anything. Like what it means is finding that routine, right? That's not overboard, but one that's just like, just get ready. Just do something that's going to get you ready and then be consistent with it. I mean, look, like I think we're all pretty much, I know I was guilty of it. I know I did something different on game day than I did on practice day. But like, all these years later, I think about it. I'm like, why? Like, why would I do something different for a game than for practice? It's like, no shit. You feel weird for a game sometimes. You're doing something completely different. Like,
Yeah,
like,
you gotta love it though. Like if you don't
yeah,
love it, like I don't know. Like I started once I started and started doing that probably 18, 17, 18. Like I said, I don't think I look back. I think, all right, I
yeah,
was getting there at least an hour before every practice.
yeah, yeah,
And you're getting in your gitch and you're sitting there with your headphones on, or maybe it's a little bit looser than game day, but
yeah.
it,
It's like a whole like
yeah,
event.
yeah,
You
and you got to do what works for you too, because some guys maybe stare at the wall for 3 hours, but some guys are joking
Right,
around, throwing tape at each other, or whatever. Like my rule of thumb, playing and coaching was like, do whatever you got to do, just don't affect anybody else.
right.
Like if
Yeah,
you can be a clown, go be a clown with somebody else. Just don't affect the guy who needs to sit there and meditate for 45
right.
minutes.
Yeah, all the clowns go be clowns over here. They got like just yeah, no, for sure. All right, we never heard back from Randall, but I'm going to answer his question with what I think it is, just for anybody else that's listening. So Randall said we have definitely landed on the email list for camps. So I'm assuming he's getting all the mass emails. He says goalies are always on the contact us before registration list. What do you advise in order to stand out a bit more so you get selected? Honestly, it, again, comes back to performance. It's your performance the previous season. The reason they're asking you to contact them is because they know they're sending out a mass email. they'll take as many players as they can get, but they can't accommodate as many goalies as they can get. So instead of going out and recruiting goalies, they're just blasting the email out and they're going to see who responds, and then they're going to pick the best two based off of what you did the previous year. That's what it sounds like to me. You know, like everybody has to remember, like, look, like majority of your tryouts, they're done. Like your performance during last season was the majority of your, of your tryout. So yeah, like in order to stand out, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of it's going to just kind of depend on your resume and what you've done. I mean, you could always do little things like, you could reach out to them an extra time and just show them that you're eager. Maybe that, wins you the tiebreaker or something, or gets you in. But that's what the situation seems like to me. We got a string of up. Randall got back. He said, "Makes sense. Thank you. Stats matter. 100% the stats matter, Randall. Absolutely, the stats matter. 100%. I mean, that's guys are looking. Guys are 100% looking at the stats. The stats, like I said earlier, are going to be the first impression. So yeah, 100% the stat, 100% the stats matter. Again, stats aren't everything, but they're a very, very big part of it. So we got a string here from Jimmy Skills. So the most recent one, Jimmy says, how do you guys handle needing to tell people the truth who need to hear it but aren't willing to accept it? And it's a good question. Like Jimmy, Jimmy was on here last week, and he obviously had no problem telling people how it is. As I have no problem telling people how it is, and I know you don't either, Ryan. And I mean, so to answer Jimmy's question, I mean, I just say it, but and I'll tell people a few times, but at the same time, like I can't, if they're not willing to accept it, they're not willing to accept it. I mean, you can't beat a dead horse. Like, like I kind of, at the end of the day, like I think everybody has to make their own decision, and I will give my input on it, and then and explain to them what I think, why I think it, and how this stuff works. But at the end of the day, if they aren't willing to accept it, well, they gotta they make their bed, they gotta sleep in it, right? Like it doesn't mean that I can do something to help them with the with the unrealistic plan, but yeah, I mean, like guys that aren't willing to accept it, I mean, I just kind of let them not accept it. Like like I said, like I'll tell them, and I'll tell them a few times, but at the end of the day, everybody's got to make their own decision. And I also don't think that I'm the king of this, right? I could be wrong about something. A lot of the stuff that I don't think I am. I know like a lot of the stuff that I talk about, I speak about it with many people a lot of times before I share it publicly. So like I know that like I've done my homework, my research on it before I come out and say it. But I could be wrong, right? A lot of this stuff, like everything, like with a lot of this stuff, it's my opinion, it's my vision on the game, and I know a lot of people share the same opinion, but that's yeah, I mean, for me, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always been player first, no matter if I was coaching for a club team or whatever the case is. Like I've been in some pretty bad spots as a player. So when I first started getting into the business side of things, I always said I would be player first, and that just means being honest. Like, and again,
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I could miss something for sure. It's probably happened. It's probably going to happen again. But I'll always tell the parent or the kid what I really think. There's no reason to sugarcoat it. And the fact of the matter is, you can probably agree to this, Swanick, is that you lose business from it. you lose business from it. And I don't care, like,
by being honest.
yeah, by being
Yeah,
honest.
100%.
And,
100%.
and it's okay. Like, you can't tell people how to spend their money. Like, you just can't. And that's okay. Like, you got to figure it out for yourself. And if you don't believe what I'm saying or telling you, and you got to go try something else, go try. Like, I don't have any ill will or wish you bad either. Like, you figure it out on your own. The premise of being honest is just like, that's huge. That's huge. Whether they want to hear it or not, like, it's the way it has to be.
Yeah, I mean, and most people, a lot of people figure it out. For a lot of people, though, they figure it out when it's too late, right? Like that's why
Yeah.
there's the saying, "I wish I knew then what I knew now," right? Like we've all been guilty about it. I mean, there's stuff that, like, like trust me, like I'm way better in this stuff today than when I was playing,
Yeah.
right? Like, like when I was playing, like some of the stuff that I thought today, I might want to wring myself back then by the neck, like, you know, like, it's like, a lot, but it's just, you know, yeah, I mean, you gotta give it to people straight, and because when people, and it's great when the guys do accept it, because once you accept it, you can start moving forward, right? Like you gotta remember too, like everything, you know, just because you're not at a certain level today doesn't mean you'll never get there. You're just not at it today. That's okay. Get to work. Get there, right? Anybody can accomplish anything. Get to work. Get there. So, you know, um, but yeah, no, that's pretty much it. We're over an hour and 31 minutes. This is the longest episode yet. They fly by. So I mean, um, but yeah, no, it's yeah, guys. If you have any last minute questions, comments, concerns, throw them up now. We're gonna cut this here, um, and yeah. So just yeah, no, it's yeah. Like I said, any last minute questions, comments, concerns, throw them up there, guys. There's a lot of new things in the works with Swan Hockey that hopefully are going to be released in the next 2 weeks. Can't promise it, but that's the plan. Is we're 2 weeks out from releasing Swan Hockey Digital, which is going to be a Web3 experience. There's lots of crazy stuff that we can do with this. The new merch, hopefully, same thing, that should be launched here within the next 2 weeks as well. A lot of the merch is gonna. I showed this the last episode. I'll show it again here so you guys could see. But gotta update my app here, and we're good. So a lot of the new merch, it's verifiable on the blockchain. So you'll scan it here with your smartphone, and it'll bring up an experience. It's going to verify it as authentic. You're going to be able to claim it. You'll be able to put it. So I don't know if you guys could see it, but that's there we go. That's the t-shirt that I just scanned, and yeah, you'll be able to claim it in your closet. There's a lot of really cool stuff that we can do with this technology. And again, I'm hoping it's, we're going to be all set for 2 weeks from now, at least with more of it. So just keep an eye out. You guys can go to swanhockey.com. There will be, everything will be on there. Don't forget to check out Scout Central and join the Discord. All right. The Discord is going to be very important in the coming weeks. So join it now. And, if anybody needs help, we got Daniel Howard, Bitcoin. Yes. Yep. We're, yeah. So Danny's familiar a little bit with what I'm talking about. So, but yeah, guys, join the Discord. You can go to swanhockey.com to join it. And, yeah, we'll see everybody next week. And, Ryan, any closing remarks? And then Ryan, what's your website?
It's swainhockeyskills.com.
So swainhockeyskills.com. Again, we're two different people, two different companies. We're good friends. And, but yeah, no, it's, so yeah, no, we've had, I know I've had a bunch of people over the years, asking me about your stuff, and I'm sure you've had the same, but,
definitely.
Yeah, no, Danny says keep it up, boys. Good stuff. Thanks, Danny. And yeah, guys, so check out Ryan's stuff. It's Swain Hockey, Swain's hockeyskills.com, correct?
Yes.
Yep, awesome. So yeah, check out Ryan's stuff. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Please, if you enjoyed this video, just give it a thumbs up, share it. Anything to help drive the algorithm, throw a comment in there, and see you guys soon. Jimbo Slice says Swan Brady. So and he threw out a Swainer. All right. Everybody have a great night. See you guys soon.
See you guys.